The ping pong balls have spoken, and the NBA's draft lottery has determined the order of selections for the July 29th draft. The Pistons walked away from the lottery with the number 1 pick, and the Rockets held on to their number 2 selection, while the Timberwolves and Bulls saw their top 10 picks conveyed to trade partners. Let's break it all down. Sit back, relax, and take this in. Before we get back to the lottery, make sure you're subscribed to our channel. We just crossed the 65,000 subscriber mark, and we want you to be a part of our next milestone. The first thing to acknowledge about the NBA's draft lottery is that Detroit basketball is back. Or should I say, Detroit! The Pistons haven't won more than 44 regular season games or a single playoff game since 2008. They haven't finished in the top half for attendance in 11 years. Yet during that run of irrelevance, the Pistons never picked higher than 7th in the draft. They've been the NBA's most depressing example of what getting stuck on the treadmill of mediocrity looks like. And no franchise is more desperate for legitimate seat-filling star power. Barring something unforeseen, the Pistons will use the top pick to select Oklahoma State's Cade Cunningham, and they'll immediately be back on track. Though the 2004 championship team did boast its own brand of gritty stars and franchise icons, the Pistons haven't employed a transcendent individual talent since who? Grant Hill more than 2 decades ago? Isaiah Thomas more than 3 decades ago? Cunningham obviously has work to do before he can even be mentioned in the same breath as such Hall of Famers, but he has legitimate superstar potential. He's also ready to make an immediate impact, and if he arrives playing the type of two-way ball that scouts expect, the Pistons can field a surprisingly competitive team as early as next season. Whether Detroit's in the 2022 Eastern Conference playoff race or not, you'd be hard-pressed to find a better collection of young talent than the combination of Cunningham plus 2020 draft picks Saddiq Bey, Isaiah Stewart, and Killian Hayes. Keep in mind too that Jeremy Grant, who looked like a borderline all-star for parts of this season, is only 27 and is still under contract for 2 more seasons. Then there's the biggest movers of lottery night. Don't get used to seeing the Raptors here. While the human toll of Toronto's displaced, COVID-interrupted season from hell should not be minimized, the Raptors' disappointing 2021 campaign is now worth it from a basketball perspective. No team made a bigger jump than the Raptors did by ending up with the 4th pick from the 7th best odds. Though the team took part in the 2016 lottery by way of the Knicks pick, thanks Andrea Bargnani, this was Toronto's first trip to the lottery with its own pick since 2012. And Tuesday's proceedings went a long way toward ensuring the Raptors should avoid many trips back. The Raptors' chances of title contention in the near future likely hinge on Kyle Lowry's free agency and whether they can swing a trade for another impact player. But the future north of the border is already much brighter than it was pre-lottery. Either the Raptors will add one of Evan Mobley, Jalen Suggs, or Jalen Green to a core of Pascal Siakam, Fred VanVleet, OG Anunoby, and Malachi Flynn, plus potentially Gary Trent Jr., who's set for restricted free agency, or they can package the number 4 pick with parts of that impressive core to join the trade sweepstakes for the league's next disgruntled star. The Raptors also own all of their future first-round selections and have multiple second-rounders this year. Speaking of potentially disgruntled stars, the entire league will be keeping a close eye on Karl Anthony Towns in Minnesota, where the Timberwolves weren't as lucky as the Raptors. Minnesota's made the playoffs just once in the last 17 seasons, and the Wolves finished with the league's 6th worst record in 2021. Yet they enter the 2021 draft without a single selection to show for it. That's because Minnesota traded both of its 2021 picks to Golden State as part of the 2020 blockbuster that sent Andrew Wiggins to the Warriors and brought D'Angelo Russell to the Twin Cities. The 2021 second rounder from that deal has since been dealt from Golden State to Oklahoma City. The Timberwolves would have kept their 2021 first rounder had it landed in the top 3, but the lottery slotted the pick 7th. Though there's a lot of young talent around Towns, including Anthony Edwards, Malik Beasley, Jaden McDaniels, Jared Culver, Joshua Okogie, and Naz Reid, among others, the team remains nowhere near contention. Meanwhile, Russell's played just 54 games since his arrival. He's owed more than $61 million over the next 2 seasons, and there are legitimate questions about the defensive downside of this roster with all 3 of D'Lo, Towns, and Edwards on board. Another lottery team without an actual lottery pick to show for it, or a first rounder at all, is the Bulls, who traded a top 4 protected pick to Orlando as part of a deadline day deal for Nikola Vucevic. That pick landed 8th, so it now conveys to the Magic. The gamble can't yet be deemed a failure for the Bulls, but it's definitely looking dicey. Vooch remains under contract through 2023, but the Bulls' first objective in acquiring him was a 2021 playoff push to help convince Zach LaVine they're committed to winning now, with LaVine set to hit unrestricted free agency next year. Instead, Chicago didn't even make the play-in tournament and was outscored by nearly 4 points per 100 possessions in the limited minutes Vucevic and LaVine shared the court. In fairness to the Bulls, LaVine missed 11 games in the league's health and safety protocols shortly after the trade, and Vucevic was awesome down the stretch. If the team bounces back with a playoff run in 2022, or it's competitive enough to keep LaVine in Chicago, then the front office will likely look back on the trade with no regrets. But if the combination of LaVine and Vucevic continues to look like the least threatening all-star duo possible, the Bulls remain a playoff afterthought, and LaVine skips town, giving up a top 8 pick will be a tough pill to swallow. That lost selection, plus the top 4 protected pick the Bulls still owe Orlando in 2023, will be sorely missed if another rebuild is in order a year from now. Remember, even in a worst-case scenario where LaVine walks and the Bulls end up with the worst record in 2022-2023, the chances their 2023 pick would land in the top 4 and remain in Chicago would still be less than 53%. And finally, what happened to the Thunder on lottery night is a reminder about the perils of the lottery. Between Shai Gilgeous-Alexander, a number of intriguing youngsters, and an unprecedented level of draft capital, the Thunder still have a terrific chance to build a sustainable contender in Oklahoma City. But Tuesday's results serve to remind tanking teams that relying on the lottery is a dangerous game. Had the Rockets' pick fallen out of the top 4, it would have conveyed to Oklahoma City, while the Thunder's own pick had a nearly 50% chance of landing in the top 5. In other words, there was a decent chance that OKC could have come out of the lottery with 2 top 5 selections in a loaded class boasting 5 potential stars at the top. Instead, the Thunder left with the number 6 pick, with the Rockets keeping the number 2 selection. That's quite the buzzkill, and it could mean that Sam Presti's Thunder will be racing to the bottom again next season. It's easy to field a losing roster and shut players down mid-season to chase losses, but then you end up losing to a Clippers team taking for playoff seeding on the last day of the season, lose a coin flip for lottery odds, end up with a 6th pick, and remember, everything's out of your control except for the losing. So what was your biggest takeaway from the lottery? Who are the biggest winners and losers? Would you dare take anyone over Cunningham? Let us know in the comments, and don't forget to like and subscribe.